All right, so buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into the world of semiconductors.
Oh, yeah.
And
This
specifically,
is going to be fun.
China's role
Yeah.
in all of this.
Yeah.
And it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. It really is.
You know, we hear about semiconductors all the time,
Right.
and they
Like how
literally everything.
everywhere.
But I think it's really interesting to look at the geopolitical side of all this.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
what is China doing and why should we care?
It's the story behind the story, right? I mean, these tiny chips that most people probably never even think about
Right.
are actually at the heart of a global power shift that's happening right now.
Right.
It's not just about faster phones or cheaper laptops anymore.
Yeah, it's way bigger than that.
This is about who controls the future of technology
Exactly.
and ultimately global power.
Yeah.
So yeah, China's moves in this space are definitely worth paying attention to.
So let's go back to basics for a second here.
Sure.
For anyone who maybe isn't as familiar with this world,
Absolutely.
what exactly are semiconductors and why are they so important?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, semiconductors are these tiny materials that can conduct electricity under certain conditions.
Right.
They're like the on-off switches that control the flow of electrons in all our electronic devices.
Ah.
And they're the brains behind everything, the logic that makes our computers, phones, cars, you name it, actually function.
And these things are like super tiny, right?
Oh, yeah, we're talking microscopic.
Oh.
Millions,
Yeah.
even billions of transistors on a single chip.
Wow.
Okay, so
It's mind-blowing when you really think about it.
yeah.
All that power packed into something the size of your fingernail.
And we've all been hearing about Moore's law
Right.
for for years, for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
But just to level set, can you explain, like, I'm 5, what Moore's law is and why it matters?
Okay, so imagine you have a pizza.
And every year you manage to fit twice as many pepperoni slices on that same size pizza.
Okay, I like where this is going.
That's basically Moore's law in action.
Okay.
It says that roughly every 2 years, the number of transistors we can squeeze onto a microchip doubles, while the cost stays about the same.
Gotcha.
So more power, more efficiency, all for the same price.
So that's why our phones get like twice as fast every couple years.
Exactly. It's been the driving force behind the incredible progress in computing power we've seen over the past few decades.
Okay, so more pepperoni on the pizza.
One pepperoni, more better.
More power.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
But here's the catch.
But there's a but.
There's always a but, right?
Oh, yeah.
Moore's law is starting to hit a wall.
So we can't just keep cramming more and more pepperoni onto this pizza forever?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
We're reaching the limits of physics.
Oh, wow.
These transistors are getting so small
Yeah.
that we're talking about manipulating matter at the atomic level.
It's becoming insanely difficult and expensive to keep shrinking them at the same rate.
So what happens now?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's where China's strategy gets really interesting.
Okay, lay it on me.
So while many see this slowdown of Moore's law as a crisis, China sees it as an opportunity.
Okay, how so?
Instead of just trying to squeeze out the last few atoms of silicon, they're taking a more holistic approach.
Okay.
They're investing heavily in areas like advanced chip packaging.
Chip packaging?
Yeah.
That sounds kind of boring.
It might not sound glamorous,
Yeah.
but it's actually crucial.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You can have the most powerful engine in the world,
Right.
but if it's not properly connected to the rest of the car, it's useless, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Chip packaging is all about how those tiny transistors are connected to the outside world, how they communicate and work together.
Okay.
As we hit the limits of miniaturization, optimizing this packaging becomes super important for performance.
So China's saying, let's not just focus on the engine, let's make sure the whole car is running smoothly.
Exactly. They're looking at the bigger picture.
Okay, so what else are they up to? What other tricks do they have up their sleeve?
Well, they're not putting all their eggs in the silicon basket either. They're
Okay.
exploring new materials like gallium nitride and graphene.
Never heard of those.
They're pretty cool.
Okay.
They have the potential to outperform silicon in certain applications.
So China's playing the field, looking at all the options,
Exactly.
while everyone else is stuck in the silicon rut.
Well, it's not that simple,
Okay.
but they are definitely diversifying their bets.
Makes sense. And I've got to say, it's a pretty smart move.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
They're thinking long term.
Okay, so we've got China thinking outside the box with chip packaging and new materials.
Right.
But they've got another ace up their sleeve, right?
Oh, absolutely.
What is it?
It's their market.
Ah,
China is the world's largest consumer of electronics.
right.
That gives them massive leverage.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about it. Every tech company in the world wants access to that huge Chinese market.
Yeah, they'd be crazy not to.
Right. So they're more willing to partner with Chinese companies, share technology, even build manufacturing facilities there.
So China's kind of calling the shots.
In a way, yeah, they have a lot of bargaining power.
It's like they're holding all the best cards in a global poker game.
That's a great analogy.
And they're not just sitting back and letting everyone else do the work.
Oh, no, not at all.
They're also building up their own homegrown tech companies, right?
Exactly. Companies like Huawei and SMIC are becoming major players on the global stage.
I've been hearing a lot about those companies.
Yeah, they're making waves.
And China's massive domestic market gives them a huge advantage.
Absolutely. It's like a giant testing ground for their innovations.
Right, they can try things out, refine their technologies, and scale up production before taking on the rest of the world.
Exactly. They have a built-in advantage that's hard to beat.
So they're controlling the market, they're building up their own tech giants.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other surprises we should know about?
Well, there's one more thing,
Okay,
and this one really caught a lot of people off guard.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
China's control over silicon production itself.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about making chips.
We are.
What does silicon production have to do with it?
It's the foundation of the whole industry.
All
We're
right.
not just talking about designing and manufacturing chips.
Ah.
China is controlling the entire supply chain.
Whoa.
From mining the raw silicon
Wow.
to producing those ultra-pure silicon wafers that the chips are built on.
So they're not just players in the game. They're controlling the field the game is played on.
Exactly. It's a brilliant strategic move.
Yeah, that's next level thinking.
It gives them incredible leverage over the entire industry.
Okay, so break down the advantages for me.
Well, first off, they're less reliant on foreign suppliers.
Ah, that's huge.
Right. They have greater control over costs, and they can potentially influence global silicon prices.
Wow, so it's not just about making chips, it's about controlling the very building blocks of the industry.
Precisely. And that's a power move few saw coming.
This is getting really interesting.
It is.
So we've got Moore's Law slowing down. China's making strategic moves to control the supply chain.
Right.
They're exploring new technologies. They're building up their own tech companies.
Yep.
It sounds like they're setting themselves up to be a dominant force in the semiconductor world.
That's exactly what's happening.
And it's a game changer for the entire tech landscape.
Absolutely.
But hold on a second. They're not just playing catch-up, are they?
No, they're not.
They're actually pushing for real innovation.
They are.
Okay, tell me more about that.
They're rethinking the very foundations of how we design and build computing systems.
Whoa.
It's pretty exciting.
Okay, give me some examples.
Well, they're exploring new computing architectures that move away from relying solely on ever smaller transistors. Instead, they're focusing on optimizing entire systems for specific tasks.
So instead of trying to build a chip that can do everything, they're specializing.
Exactly.
Give me an example.
For example, instead of building a general-purpose chip that can run a spreadsheet and play a video game, they might design a specialized chip that's incredibly efficient at running AI algorithms.
Ah, so it's like building a race car for a specific track.
Exactly. Instead of trying to modify a regular car to do everything.
Okay, I like that analogy.
And this shift in thinking could lead to major breakthroughs.
In what areas?
Areas like AI, big data analytics,
Okay.
even quantum computing.
Wow. So China's not just playing the game, they're changing the rules of the game.
That's a great way to put it.
This is pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is, and it's just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about what semiconductors are, why they're so important,
Right.
how Moore's Law is hitting a wall, and how China's taking advantage of this situation to become a major player in the semiconductor world.
And they're just getting started.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just getting warmed up.
Exactly. It's a whole new way of thinking about computing, and it has the potential to really shake things up.
And they're not stopping there, right?
Oh, definitely not.
What else are they doing to make sure they stay ahead of the curve?
Well, one crucial aspect is talent.
Okay.
They're going all out to attract the best and brightest minds in the world.
Ah, the brain drain in reverse.
Exactly.
I've read articles about how they're building these massive research cities dedicated to semiconductor development.
It's incredible, isn't it? They're creating these Silicon Valley-style hubs,
Right.
but on a scale we've never seen before.
So it's like they're saying, hey, come to China. We've got the resources, the funding, and the ambition to make groundbreaking discoveries happen.
Precisely. And it's not just about recruiting established experts. They're investing heavily in STEM education at all levels.
So they're building a pipeline of future semiconductor ninjas?
Exactly. They're playing the long game here, and they're thinking generations ahead.
It's an impressive strategy, I've got to admit, but it can't all be smooth sailing, right?
Of course, not every grand plan faces its challenges.
What are some of the potential roadblocks they might encounter?
Well, one of the big hurdles is the current geopolitical climate,
Right. Things are a bit tense out there.
to say the least.
We've got all this talk about decoupling and countries trying to reduce their reliance on China for critical technologies.
It's definitely adding a layer of complexity to the situation.
So this semiconductor race isn't just about technology anymore. It's become a high-stakes geopolitical chess match.
Precisely. And the outcome of this match could have profound consequences for the global balance of power.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that these tiny little chips are at the center of such a massive power struggle.
It really is. But that's the reality we live in today. Technology's power, and semiconductors are the foundation of that power.
So as China continues to gain influence in this strategically important industry, what are some of the key questions we should be asking ourselves?
One of the biggest questions is, how will this new landscape impact global trade?
Right. Will it lead to a more multipolar world, or will it exacerbate existing tensions?
It's hard to say for sure.
It feels like we're heading into uncharted territory.
We are, and that's what makes it so fascinating and also a bit unnerving.
Okay, so we've talked about the geopolitical implications,
Right.
but let's bring it back down to earth for a second.
Okay.
How does all of this affect everyday people like our listeners?
That's a great question, and it's one we should always keep in mind.
So what's the bottom line here?
Well, on a practical level, China's semiconductor ambitions could lead to cheaper and more powerful electronics for consumers around the world.
So good news for our wallets and our gadgets.
Exactly. Their innovations could drive down prices and make cutting-edge technologies more accessible to everyone.
So potentially a win for consumers.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, but I imagine there's a flip side to all of this as well.
Of course.
What are some of the potential downsides?
Well, as China becomes a dominant player in this industry, it raises some concerns about over-reliance and potential vulnerabilities.
What do you mean?
What happens if global trade patterns shift dramatically? Or if political tensions escalate?
Right. It makes you realize just how interconnected the world really is.
It does.
What happens in the semiconductor industry in China can have ripple effects all over the planet.
Exactly. It's a complex ecosystem, and we're all part of it.
Okay, so we've got the technological advancements, the geopolitical maneuvering, the economic implications. It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to digest.
Is there a way to make sense of all of this, to see the bigger picture here? Where do we go from here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot to process for sure. It feels like we're at a crossroads. China's really shaking things up in the semiconductor world. But where do we go from here?
Well, I think one thing's for sure. The semiconductor industry, it's not just some niche tech sector anymore.
Yeah,
It's really a key driver of global power
it really is.
and economics and technological innovation.
Right.
And China's rise in this field, it's forcing everyone to rethink their game plan.
So let's zoom out a bit
Sure.
and look at the bigger picture. If China does become the dominant player in semiconductors, what does that mean for the rest of the world?
Well, we're already seeing a range of responses. Some countries are doubling down on their own domestic semiconductor industries,
Right.
pumping money into research and development, offering incentives to attract chip manufacturers.
Yeah.
Others are forming alliances,
Okay.
trying to diversify their supply chains,
Makes sense.
reduce their reliance on any single country.
So it's a bit of a scramble.
It is a bit of a scramble. Yeah.
Everyone trying to figure out how to position themselves in this new world order.
Exactly.
Are there any strategies or approaches that you think are particularly interesting or promising?
One thing I'm keeping a close eye on is the growing emphasis on open source technologies.
Oh, that's interesting.
There are initiatives like the risc-v architecture,
Okay.
which is an open source instruction set architecture for designing chips.
So that means
Yeah.
anyone can use it.
It's open.
Okay.
It allows companies and countries to develop their own custom chips without being locked into proprietary technologies.
So that could really level the playing field
They could, yeah.
and maybe even foster a more diverse
Oh, yeah.
and resilient semiconductor ecosystem.
It's an interesting development for sure.
It's kind of a collaborative approach to a very competitive field.
Right, and it's a recognition that no single country can do everything on its own.
Right, it takes a village,
It does.
even in the cutthroat world of semiconductors.
Exactly.
So even if China takes the lead in certain areas, they'll still need to work with other countries to some extent.
Absolutely.
There's just too much interdependence
There is, yeah.
in terms of research and manufacturing and supply chains.
It's a global industry.
It is.
And that interdependence, I think it creates opportunities for collaboration.
Right, it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all.
There's still room for countries to work together.
Definitely.
Maybe even specialize in different areas.
Right.
Contribute their own unique expertise.
And that could lead to some really exciting breakthroughs.
It's a much more optimistic outlook than I think a lot of people might expect.
It is, but we have to be realistic too.
Of course.
The semiconductor industry is inherently competitive.
Right.
There will always be geopolitical tensions, economic rivalries.
It's the nature of the beast.
It is.
But I think the key takeaway here is that the future of this industry, and really the future of technology as a whole, it's not set in stone.
It's being shaped right now
Right.
by the choices we make, by the investments we prioritize, by the partnerships we forge.
It's a good reminder that we all have a role to play.
We do.
And the more informed we are, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this crazy world.
Absolutely.
And make decisions that shape the future we want.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, it's been an incredible journey exploring the world of semiconductors.
It has.
And China's rise in this field.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From the technical details to the geopolitical implications to the potential impact on our everyday lives.
It's a complex and fascinating topic.
It really is. And I want to thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
For sharing your expertise with us and guiding us through this intricate landscape.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there.
Yeah.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity about this incredible world.
Yeah.
The world of semiconductors.
They're everywhere.
And giving you a glimpse into the forces that are shaping the future of technology and the world as we know it.
It's an exciting time to be paying attention.
It is. And we hope you'll join us again next time for another deep dive into the fascinating technologies that are changing our world.
Until then, keep